It only took one sentence to almost end my life on the courtroom. My ex-husband, Christian, adjusted his $3,000 suit like he belonged there. Like the space itself had been built for him. He looked calm, confident, completely in control. Then he lifted his eyes and spoke directly to the judge. "She is unstable, Your Honor. She projects her trauma onto our daughter. I am requesting full custody immediately." His voice was steady, practiced, convincing. And the worst part, it worked. The judge gave a slow, thoughtful nod, her expression softening in the exact way I had feared. She wasn't seeing him the way I saw him. She was seeing what he wanted her to see: a responsible man, a concerned father, a good person. I opened my mouth to speak, to defend myself, to say anything, but nothing came out. It felt like the air had turned solid inside my chest, like I was trying to breathe through stone. I was sitting right there in the room, and still. I was disappearing, but then a small movement beside me. My 7-year-old daughter, Sophia, stood up. She didn't reach for my hand. She didn't look at me for guidance. Instead, she raised something in the air, a scratched-up purple handheld game console, held tightly in her small fingers. "I have a video," she said. Her voice shook, but it was loud enough to cut through the silence. "I think you need to see who my daddy really is." Entire room froze. No whispers, no movement, no sound. Just silence. And then she pressed the power button. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I always like knowing who's part of this journey. Now, to understand why that courtroom felt so heavy that morning, like something was already decided before I even walked in, you need to understand who Christian really was. Because, to the world, he wasn't just my ex-husband. He was Councilman Christian Vance. In our city, his name carried weight. He was the man cutting ribbons at grand openings, shaking hands with everyone, smiling for cameras. The kind of man who knew exactly how firm his handshake should be, strong enough to show confidence, gentle enough to seem kind. People trusted him, they admired him, and, most dangerously, they believed him. There's a psychological term for what was happening in that courtroom. The halo effect. It's when people see someone who looks successful, attractive, and confident, automatically assume they are good, moral, safe, Christian didn't just benefit from that, he built his entire identity around it. He knew that if he looked like the perfect father, the world would shape itself around that image. And me, I was easy to dismiss. A quiet woman, tired eyes, shaking hands. I didn't look like truth, I looked like doubt. Sitting there, watching him smile slightly at the stenographer, I felt that familiar, sick feeling, the one you get when you're the only person in the room who knows something is wrong. To everyone else, he was saving his daughter. To me, he was the man who had spent 7 years slowly taking me apart. There were no screams in our home. No broken furniture, no bruises. Christian didn't hurt me loudly, he did it quietly, carefully, like someone erasing a mistake. He would look at me when I spoke until I doubted my own words. He would correct my memories, rewrite moments, twist conversations until I didn't trust myself anymore. It wasn't violence you could point at, it was violence you felt. And by the time I realized what was happening, I didn't know what was real anymore. The most terrifying part? He didn't want full custody because he loved Sophia. That would have made sense. That would have been human, no too Christian. Fatherhood was an inconvenience. He hated the noise she made, the mess, the attention she needed. He didn't want to raise her. He wanted control. He wanted to remove me. As long as I had Sophia, I still existed. I still had a voice. Taking her away from me, that was the final step. I watched him lean toward his lawyer, whispering something that made the man smile. Everything about him fit the image perfectly. The judge wasn't seeing danger. She was seeing success. And in that moment, I understood something cold and undeniable. The truth didn't matter. Facts didn't matter in this room. His story was stronger than my reality. He wasn't just going to win. He was going to be praised for it if his world lived in the spotlight. Ours existed in the shadows. Sophia and I lived in what we called the fortress. It wasn't fancy. It was a converted attic in an old house on the edge of the city. The floors tilted slightly. The radiator hissed constantly, and when it rained, the sound on the roof was so loud it felt like the world was closing in. But we loved it because it was the one place Christian never came. He called it a rat's nest to us. It was safety. I worked there every day, headphones pressed tightly over my ears. I'm a medical transcriptionist. I spend my time listening to doctors speak, recording diagnoses, writing out words no one wants to hear. That job taught me something. Important. The truth isn't always in what people say, it's in what they. Avoid. In the pauses. In the silence. Sophia was the same. Quiet. Observant. She didn't run around like other kids. She would sit for hours with her purple game console, the one I bought from a pawn shop. It was scratched, worn out, but she loved it. She took it everywhere. Christian hated it. He said it made her distant, but he was wrong. She wasn't. Disconnecting, she was watching in court. When my lawyer nudged me to speak, to object, to fight back, I stayed silent. People think silence means weakness, but there's a term for what? I was experiencing learned helplessness, like an animal tied to a post for so long. It forgets it can break free. Christian had spent years teaching me that fighting back only made things worse. If I argued, he punished me financially. If I cried, he disappeared. I learned that the safest thing to do was nothing. So in that courtroom, I wasn't weak. I was surviving. I was making myself small, hoping he would lose interest. But I forgot something important. While I was staying still, my daughter was watching everything. She hadn't learned to stay quiet yet. She hadn't accepted the invisible chain while I was surviving. She was recording. The weeks before that final hearing weren't a fight, they were a slow collapse. Christian didn't just want to win, he wanted to leave nothing behind. First came the email from his lawyer, of course. Always clean, always distant. It was about a boarding school. Far away, 3 states away, a better environment for Sophia. He didn't want to raise her. He wanted to remove her. Then came the lawsuit, $60,000 in legal fees. An amount he knew I couldn't afford. It wasn't about money, it was about pressure. He wanted me to give up. And then the hallway, the moment I'll never forget. I was standing near a water fountain, trying to steady my shaking hands when I smelled it, his cologne. Sandalwood. Peppermint. Before I could move, he stepped close. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to trap me in his space. "You look tired," he whispered softly. "Why are you doing this to yourself?" I didn't respond. I didn't even look at him. "We both know how this ends," he continued calmly. "You can't afford to fight me." His voice stayed smooth, controlled. Double quotes. "Take the deal. Let her go to the school. I'll drop the fees. You can go back to your little attic, your little life." My hands clenched at my sides. "If you walk into that courtroom tomorrow," he added quietly, "I will bury you." A pause. Then the final words, "You're already erased. You just haven't realized it yet." He pulled back, flashed a charming smile at a passing clerk, and walked away. I stood there listening to the click of his Italian leather shoes on the marble floor. He thought he had broken me. He thought the fear would make me fold. But he had made a miscalculation. He thought he was speaking to the woman who played possum. He didn't realize that when you corner a mother and threaten her child, she doesn't play dead anymore. She wakes up. The hearing resumed, and the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted from tension to inevitability. Christian's lawyer was wrapping up his closing argument, painting a picture of a future where Sophia flourished in a structured academic environment far away from my chaotic influence. He used words like potential, stability, and best interests. Every syllable was a nail in the coffin of my life as a mother. I sat there gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. The $60,000 lawsuit was heavy in my mind. But the brochure for Street Jude's Academy was heavier. The image of Sophia in a dormitory 3 states away. Waking up from a nightmare with no one to call filled my mind with white noise. I tried to speak, to object, to say anything, but the learned helplessness was a physical weight on my chest. The possum was playing dead. Even as the predator opened its jaws, Judge Harmon looked over her glasses at me. She looked tired. She had seen 1,000 custody battles. And to her, this was just another Tuesday. "Miss Vance," she said, using Christian's last name, which stung every time. "Do you have any final evidence to present before I make my ruling regarding temporary custody?" My lawyer started to stand, probably to ask for a continuance or to plead poverty regarding the legal fees. But before he could speak, there was a sound from the bench behind me. It was the sound of a zipper, loud and harsh in the quiet room. I turned around. Sophia was standing up. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Christian. In her hands, she held the purple game console. It was battered. The screen was covered in fingerprints, and the plastic casing was chipped on the corner from where she had dropped it on the sidewalk last month. It looked ridiculous in this room of mahogany wood and leather-bound books. It was a toy, a piece of junk. Christian saw it and let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a dismissive one. He turned to the judge with a look of long-suffering patience. "Your Honor," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "this is exactly what I mean. She brings that toy everywhere. She is addicted to it because her mother uses it as a babysitter. Sophia, put that away. Adults are talking." He used his councilman voice, the voice that made people sit down and shut up, the voice that had silenced me for a decade. Sophia didn't sit down. She didn't flinch. She walked past me, past the plaintiff's table where Christian stood in his $3,000 suit. She walked right up to the bafe. She was so small that her head barely cleared the railing. "I need to plug this in," she said. Her voice was small, but it didn't shake. "It has an audio jack like for headphones." The bafe looked at the judge, confused. Christian sighed, a theatrical exhale meant to show everyone how exhausting it was to deal with an undisciplined child. "Your Honor, please," Christian said. "She's just playing a game. This is a waste of the court's time." Judge Harmon looked at Christian, then down at Sophia. Maybe she saw something in Sophia's face. The same dark circles I had, the same set of the jaw. Or maybe she was just tired of Christian's polished perfection. "Let her plug it in," the judge said. The bafe took the device. He found an auxiliary cable connected to the court's AV system and plugged it into the headphone jack of the purple console. The speakers around the room popped with a burst of static. Sophia stood on her tiptoes and pressed the play button on the side of the device. For 3 seconds, there was only the sound of static and the ambient noise of a room. Christian checked his watch, shaking his head. He was already planning his victory dinner. He thought he had one. He didn't know that the static was the sound of his world ending. The screen on the wall flickered to life. It wasn't a video game. It was a video recording, shaky and slightly grainy, taken from a low angle as if the camera were hidden on a shelf or under a bed. The image stabilized. It was Christian, but he wasn't in court. He was in his master bathroom, standing in front of the mirror. He was wearing the same suit he wore today, but his tie was undone. "She's unstable, Your Honor," Christian said to his reflection. He paused, frowned, and shook his head. "No, too aggressive. Soften it. Make them feel sorry for you." He took a deep breath, adjusted his posture, and tried again. His face transformed. His eyes drooped slightly. His shoulders slumped. The perfect picture of a weary, concerned father. "She is unstable, Your Honor," he said again, his voice cracking perfectly on the word unstable. "She projects her own trauma onto our daughter. I just want to protect Sophia." He stared at himself in the mirror for a beat, then broke into a wide, self-satisfied grin. Nailed it. The courtroom was frozen. I could feel the oxygen leaving the room. Christian, the real Christian sitting 10 feet away from me, had gone pale. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. On the screen, Christian's phone rang. He answered it on speaker, setting it on the marble counter while he fixed his tie. "Hey, did you get the email about the boarding school?" It was his lawyer's voice, the same lawyer currently sitting next to him, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. "Yeah, I got it," Christian said on the video, laughing. Street Jude sounds miserable. "Perfect. Are you sure about this, Christian?" the lawyer asked. "Sending her 3 states away. The judge might think that's extreme. You're asking for full custody just to ship her off." Christian leaned into the mirror, inspecting his teeth. The camera caught the cold, dead look in his eyes, the look I knew so well, the one he hid from everyone else. "I don't care about the kid, Mike," he said. The words hung in the courtroom air, toxic and undeniable. "I don't want to raise her. I just want to break Brianna. Taking the kid is the only way to do it. Once she's gone, Brianna falls apart and I win. That's the game." He laughed again, a cruel, hollow sound that echoed through the court speakers. "Besides, a boarding school means I don't have to deal with her little toys or her staring. Win-win." The video ended. The screen went black. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the ventilation system. The silence was absolute. It was the sound of a carefully constructed reality shattering into a million pieces. The halo effect didn't just fade. It evaporated. The mask didn't slip. It disintegrated. Christian stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's a deep fake," he shouted, his voice high and thin. "That's AI. She manipulated it. She works with computers." But his voice cracked. His hands were shaking violently. He looked around the room, searching for an ally, for someone who still saw the golden boy. But there were no allies left. The stenographer looked horrified. The bailiff looked ready to arrest him. And Judge Harmon looked like she had just seen the devil. She took off her glasses slowly, her eyes never leaving Christian's face. The disgust in her expression was visceral. It was the look of a woman who realized she had almost handed a child to a monster. Sophia stood there holding the purple console, looking small and fierce. She hadn't played a game. She had played the truth. She had captured the monster in his own lair, rehearsing his lines, revealing his heart. "I tried to tell you," Sophia said into the silence. Her voice was the only steady thing in the room. "He doesn't love me. He just wants to win." The silence that followed Sophia's words was not empty. It was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm breaks. Judge Harmon stared at Christian for a long, uncomfortably silent minute. She didn't look at his suit. She didn't look at his perfect hair. She looked right through the mask of sanity to the hollow, calculating creature shivering underneath. "Mr. Vance?" the judge said, her voice dropping to a register that scraped against the floorboards. "In 20 years on the bench, I have seen parents fight for their children out of love, out of desperation, and even out of spite. But I have never seen a parent treat a custody hearing like a theatrical audition." Christian opened his mouth, but the charm was gone. The halo effect had shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces, leaving him exposed. "Your Honor, I was just preparing. It's a stressful situation. I was venting. You were rehearsing." She corrected him, sharp as a scalpel. "You were coaching yourself on how to best manipulate this court into destroying a mother and exiling a child. You admitted on tape that you do not want." She turned to the stenographer. "Strike the plaintiff's previous testimony from the record as perjury, and let the record show that based on the video evidence presented by the minor child, this court finds Mr. Vance's petition for full custody to be not only meritless, but malicious." She looked back at Christian. "I am stripping you of all custody rights, effective immediately. I am also referring this recording to the district attorney's office for review. Regarding potential fraud and perjury charges, and Mr. Vance, if you ever attempt to contact Miss Vance or Sophia again, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your term in a cell, not a council seat. Get out of my courtroom." Christian stood up. He looked small. The expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume that didn't fit. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Sophia. He grabbed his briefcase and walked out, the click of his heels no longer sounding like authority, but like a retreat. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 7 years. My lawyer squeezed my arm, beaming, but I couldn't smile. Not yet. I just reached down and took Sophia's hand. "Let's go," I whispered. We walked out of the courthouse and into the savannah afternoon. It was pouring rain. The sky was a bruised purple and the streets were slick and gray. Usually the rain made me anxious. It reminded me of the leaks in the attic, of the cold I couldn't always afford to keep out. But today it felt like a baptism. It felt like the city was washing itself clean. We didn't go straight home to the fortress. We walked 3 blocks to a small neon-lit ice cream parlor. We sat in a booth by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. Sophia ordered mint chocolate chip. I ordered coffee black for a long time. We didn't speak. We just sat there, 2 survivors in a booth, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of sirens that were no longer coming for us. I looked at the purple game console sitting on the table between us. It wasn't a toy. It was a black box recorder. It was the witness that had saved our lives. "You weren't playing games," I said softly. Sophia looked up from her ice cream. "Sometimes," she said, "but mostly I was listening. You told me the truth is in the static, Mom." So I learned how to record the static. I reached across the table and covered her small hand with mine. I realized then that I hadn't been protecting her in the attic. We had been protecting each other. She wasn't checked out. She was tuned into a frequency that Christian was too arrogant to hear. To the world, children like Sophia are invisible. They are the quiet ones in the back of the classroom. They are the ones who don't raise their hands, who flinch at loud noises, who prefer the company of machines to people. Society pies them. It calls them shy or traumatized or broken. But I know the truth now. To the quiet children, the ones who have to grow up in homes where the air pressure changes before the explosion, I see you. I know that your silence isn't emptiness. It is observation. You are the archivist of your own survival. You see the things the adults are too busy performing to notice. You hear the rehearsal behind the rage. You are not broken. You are deep cover agents in a war you didn't start. And your superpower isn't that you can disappear. It's that you are the only ones really watching. Sophia finished her ice cream and wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Can we go home now?" she asked. "I want to listen to the rain on the roof." "Yeah," I said, standing up and putting on my coat. "Let's go home." We walked back into the rain, hand in hand. The fortress was waiting for us. It was still drafty. It was still small. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a bunker. It felt like a home. And the only voice in the static was our own. If you've ever had to be the brave one in the shadows, share this story. Let the world know that the truth eventually finds a voice. Subscribe for more stories of justice.